thank you very much for joining us and again speaking to us as we
You're welcome, Tom.
we look to the 6th of May. The first place I wanted to start was looking at what has changed since 2017, and I know within the last year an awful lot has, but what have you learned from the last sort of 3-4 years as being Mayor of Greater Manchester, and what has changed in that time?
Oh my goodness. I mean, Tom, so much has happened is the first thing that kind of comes into my mind. We've been through a lot, haven't we? Tragedy, wildfires, a pandemic, a lot has happened. What comes over to me is just how strong this place is, the way people pull together. Often the support I feel I've had has just been inspiring, to be honest. I mean, it keeps me strong, it keeps me going. And just a reflection on this campaign compared to the 2017 campaign. 2017, all of the kind of debate was about homelessness. It was just dominated the campaign. I just did a TV hustings yesterday and it didn't even get mentioned as an issue. And I think that says something, doesn't it, about the power of what we're building here in Greater Manchester. People have worked together on that issue. We are not where we want to be on it, but a real change has been made on homelessness. And I think that should say to people going into the 6th of May that it's worth voting, because actually this role and the devolution of power to Greater Manchester can make a real difference to people's lives.
As you say, homelessness and tackling rough sleeping was such a big part of your 2017 election manifesto. And it continues into this, though, doesn't it, as well? How do you want to see the work that you've done there continue over the next few years? What can be still improved, do you think?
Oh, I'm certainly, not suggesting it's not an issue, Tom. It is still a major issue. But I think the fact that it's not dominating this campaign is because people can see things are moving in the right direction. If you go back to 2017, the number of people sleeping rough was increasing exponentially. It was a real crisis on our streets. People could see it. They were alarmed by it. They didn't want to see that level of poverty in a city like ours and people not being supported. So we have turned it around. I mean, in figures, there were 300 people sleeping rough about that number around the time of the 2017 election. It's in double figures now. It varies. On the last count, it was around 70. And most of those 70 have had some type of support offered to them. It just hasn't worked for them yet. So it's not where we want it to be, but there's been a huge amount of change. Going into this election, I'm committing to maintain a bed every night, which is the big policy that we've put forward to bring about this change. So that currently looks after 500 people every night. I've agreed with the 10 leaders of Greater Manchester that it will continue for the next mayoral term. I'll continue to donate 15% of my own salary to support a bed every night, as I have done since elected. It will continue to be a big personal priority. But finally, more broadly, we are about to bring forward a homelessness prevention strategy for Greater Manchester. And this will look at much more broader causes of homelessness. So we're going to bring forward a good landlord charter to regulate the private rented sector. We are going to develop a plan within the first year of the election for 30,000 homes for social rent, zero carbon homes, where they're going to be built, how they're going to be built. So you will see a raising of our ambition on the whole issue of homelessness and a more sophisticated response, having dealt with the immediate crisis.
Do you worry that the pandemic in any way might make your job harder there? We hear of potential evictions that may come as the eviction ban is lifted. Is there potentially a big fallout off the back of this?
Yeah, I do worry a lot about that. I think we've had a mental health crisis running in parallel with the pandemic, but perhaps it hasn't had the attention it deserves so far because of our focus has been on the control of the virus. But I think it's going to be hard to heal the place, our communities. It will require a new focus on mental health coming out of this. And again, it's something we've all committed to put mental health much more center stage, everyday mental health of people. We will have a new focus on improving people's work. The sad fact is the virus has taken a hold in many of our poorer communities because people haven't been able to stop work because they know they won't be paid if they stop work. And that single fact, in my view, explains more than anything else why case numbers have been higher in parts of the north and in parts of the south over the last year, because more people work in those kind of jobs here than they do elsewhere. So the Greater Manchester Good Employment Charter will be a big part of what we bring forward and put centre stage. And I think we need, as I said before, to improve people's homes. So alongside the Good Employment Charter, a good landlord charter to start to regulate the private rented sector. You know, many landlords are good, but others are not. And they don't maintain their properties properly. They don't have a care for what goes on inside the properties. That needs to change.
And how much of a balance is there to strike in that? We can see Manchester's growing. We see the sky rises. We also see the prices that come with that as well. So is there a balance to strike in getting those affordable homes and also seeing Greater Manchester grow and attracting that growth?
Yes, that's absolutely spot on, that question, because it is about both, isn't it? It's not about just focusing on one of those things. We want to keep building the city region, make it a place that people want to come to, attracting some of the best talent from around the country, around the world. And that means creating a modern, attractive city centre. And I like to think that has happened under my watch. But it's not just about that. And here's the important bit. We had funding from the government to create loans to developers to be able to build housing in the city centre and elsewhere. But we are now recycling those loans back to broader housing policies. So, for instance, the Good Landlord Charter is being funded by the money we've made off the back of loans issued through the Housing Investment Loan Scheme. So I think you can see there how the whole picture starts to come together, how the housing success in the city centre can support our ambitions for truly affordable housing, a properly regulated private rented sector in the wider city region.
And those homes you're talking about, will they be, I assume, spread across Greater Manchester? I know some of your rivals who are standing for this have often criticised the fact that there's a very heavy city centre focus on some of the work that's already been done here over the last few years.
Well, it's an easy criticism to make, and actually it doesn't stack up when you look at the evidence. So I have given my support to the first mayoral development corporation in the country focused on a town centre, so on Stockport, where 3,500 new homes are being built as part of a massive transformation of Stockport town centre. So that directly answers that criticism, which isn't, as I say, a correct criticism. And what I've said is any other of our 9 councils can also have a mayoral development corporation. We're talking to the Labour leadership in Bolton about a mayoral development corporation or zone for Farnworth. We are talking to Trafford Council about their plans for Stretford, to Tameside about their plans for Staley Bridge. It just isn't the case that this is all about city centre Manchester or Salford.
And in seeing that growth spread in that, well, does the Metrolink form part of that as well? Every time that we talk about transport, some of our listeners come to us and talk about getting it out west, and I know it's something we've spoken to you about over the last few years. Do you see the Metrolink being able to grow out that way over the coming years?
Well, we have taken it out west. I have overseen the delivery of the Trafford Park extension to Metrolink, ahead of schedule and on budget. And obviously, by taking the Metrolink to the Trafford Centre, it opens up an opportunity for people to park up off the M60 and then get the tram for the rest of their journey. So that definitely is a start. But I would like to see Metrolink develop in that direction. Obviously, the government made a commitment to take it to Bolton. It was maybe more of a general election promise than a real commitment, because we're still waiting to see evidence of the money. But if they're serious, then we would want to work with them on that. Obviously, there are plans to take it to Stockport. The area I've got a particular focus on is Middleton. I think it's a town that really would benefit massively from Metrolink. It would support our wider economic ambitions for the city region, with the rebalancing of some of the investment to the north of the city region. So it is about west, but it's about north as well. So Middleton, Bolton. We are going to build Greater Manchester's first new train station in Golborne in the Wigan Borough. If I'm re-elected, I've made the funds available to do that. So Absolutely, it's about transport connectivity in all 10 boroughs. But the big issue, Tom, is the buses. And I don't know whether we could just go on to talk about that, because that will be the defining issue of this campaign and what comes after.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, we spoke to you a few weeks ago at that announcement. And in terms of seeing that progress, then I know we mentioned at the time, and you highlighted that there may be a few challenges along the way. In terms of those plans going through the motions now, is it moving along in the way that you'd hope?
To a degree, I mean, I've made the decision. So there is a franchising scheme in place now. So it's a legal construct. It's not a kind of campaign promise. This is a real direction that we're heading in. But it is being legally challenged by the bus companies. And the mayoral candidate for the Conservative Party is effectively, in my view, siding with them by not committing to the franchising scheme that Transport for Greater Manchester have recommended. So it isn't, if you like, settled in that is still looming. What I am saying to people is, use your vote at this election. If you want to see buses back under public control, vote for it, because it's a big moment, this. For me, it's only by taking control of the buses in terms of what they can charge, where they go, that we can create an integrated London-style public transport system, where effectively buses and trams work as one system. So it's all Metrolink, if you want to think of it as that way. Because you were talking about, taking the lines out to Middleton and Bolton and other places. Well, actually, if we got buses running where we want them to run, and then people can jump on a tram halfway through their journey and it not cost them any more money, that actually improves transport much more quickly. And it's critical that we have the control, and that's why the franchising scheme is so important. I can promise a London-style public transport system over bus and tram with a daily cap, a limit on what people can spend, no matter how many buses and trams they take, by 2025. We've got a plan to deliver that. And I just would urge people, if you like the sound of that, if you want to see a sort of single integrated system under a single livery, the B network, as I'm calling it, then please go out and vote for it on May the 6th.
And on transport, and it ties into the environment as well, the clean air zone is something that has been talked about for a long time and has been somewhat controversial for some. Is that something that you are still committed to seeing something in place that will help clean up our air?
It's not so much committed to, we're being instructed to do it by the government. I think this sometimes gets missed. It's our political opponents like to portray this as a sort of a Labour initiative. We're being told we have to do this because the government lost a court case about it. And the problem we have at the moment is they're trying to impose this on us or make us do it without fully funding the implications of what will come from it, i.e. the need for taxi drivers and van drivers to be able to change their vehicles so they become compliant vehicles. So let me be clear about this. It's not a congestion charge, as other candidates are claiming. Even the Conservative minister said in the House of Commons it's not a congestion charge. A congestion charge is a charge to pay the road, to use the road, sorry. And I have ruled that out completely. That will never happen under my watch. A clean air zone is something different. It's basically a requirement for people to have compliant vehicles. And if you don't, then you pay a charge. But if you have a compliant vehicle, you don't. And it doesn't apply to private cars. So the vast majority of people are completely unaffected by this anyway. If the government was to fully fund it and allow us to do it without damaging jobs and businesses, then we've no problem with it. We think it should be done. The problem, it's like the tier 3 debate. They're telling us to do something without putting in the support for us to do it. And that's why we're still, in this argument with them. And if the government won't fully fund it, I will then have to look at exemptions or delays to protect jobs and businesses as we move forward. But I'd rather get the money, help taxi drivers and van drivers switch to cleaner vehicles. Nobody then will pay any charge and all of our air will be cleaner. That's the way to resolve this.
If we can speak quickly about crime and the repairing the damage to Greater Manchester Police. What will your priorities be there in terms of rebuilding trust from the public and making sure that people see Greater Manchester Police as a force that they can trust and that will fulfil what they need it to do?
I think it's important to say that, while there are real challenges, don't get me wrong, Greater Manchester Police are out there serving our communities every day. And the idea that, it's all broken, well, they're just not. They are very strong in many respects, and there are many brilliant individuals working within our police force. But there are very serious issues that need to be put right. If you look back at the root causes, I would argue that I inherited a severely weakened police force in 2017. There had been 7 years of Conservative and Lib Dem cuts to frontline policing in Greater Manchester. We lost 3,000 staff altogether, 2,000 officers, 1,000 staff. Now that has an impact. And then you put the arena on top of that, and the need to change the IT system on top of that. You can see how the police have been overwhelmed, basically, in the circumstances that they've been in. But it's not about excuses. I'm just trying to say, well, how has this happened? Therefore, how do we put it right? I've begun to put it right by recruiting again. So there are 700 more frontline police officers out there in our communities today than when I became mayor in 2017. But we're not yet back to where we were. So we're recruiting more again, 300 more this year. And obviously I've used the big power that I have as Police and Crime Commissioner, and that is to change the leadership. And that is something you don't do lightly. But when you look at what's happening, I decided it was necessary to restore the confidence that you rightly spoke about. So I think the combination of those things, Tom, has created the conditions where Greater Manchester Police, I believe, will improve. Well, they are improving, and we will see, I think, quite dramatic improvement under the new Chief Constable. He inherited a South Yorkshire police force post the Hillsborough inquest, which was in a much worse state, and his record is highly impressive in turning them around. And what convinced me to appoint him, his force was rated outstanding for culture and ethics. And I want to see that in Greater Manchester Police. So I believe we've got the right leader. We are recruiting more police officers. The damage is being repaired, but it can't happen overnight.
Because a lot of people felt let down, didn't they, when they saw that 80,000 crimes that hadn't been recorded. And many do wonder how you were able to let that happen on your watch whilst in the role as Police and Crime Commissioner.
Well, this is the important thing about the role. See, I don't run the police. And it's a myth that people put around for political reasons to suggest that I'm in there every day looking at every file and telling them which crime to go to. That isn't the job, and it shouldn't be the job, because that's how policing in Russia is done, where politicians stick their nose in and make politically oriented decisions with regard to it. That doesn't happen here. Policing is independent. The role of Police and Crime Commissioner is reactive. When something goes wrong, you then have to hold them to account and make them put it right. Now, of course, that figure of 80,000 is not actual crimes. The HMIC said they looked at Greater Manchester Police from April to June last year, and they said on the basis of what they saw between April and June, if that performance carried on all year, then there would be 80,000 crimes. Now, that isn't going to happen because obviously some of the issues that have been flagged up there are already being put right. And let's remember, April to June 2020 was not a normal period in policing. I think it's fair to say as well. However, but none of this is about excuses. It's challenging, but the role of Mayor of Greater Manchester is to face up to challenging things and deal with them using the powers that you've got. The power that I have as Police and Crime Commissioner, the main power is to remove the leadership. I do not have the power to intervene day to day. And so I've used the power. I think I've put them back on the right path. And I'm happy to be held to account on that basis going forward.
And to finish, it's been such an awful year, hasn't it, for so many of us in Greater Manchester. We're now finally able to get back out and start enjoying different parts of life there. And what are you most excited about in Greater Manchester in the next 3 to 4 years that you're really keen to see Greater Manchester growing and go in a certain direction?
I am excited about what comes next. I've called the manifesto I put forward Our Time, because I do think it's our time. The city's exciting. It's got a buzz about it. It always has had, but I think it's stronger than it's ever been. The Sunday Times doesn't call us the most exciting and livable big city in the UK for no reason. There's something happening. We've seen inward investment over the last few years that has brought jobs to the city that when I looked for my first job in Manchester in the early 90s, I couldn't have imagined the kind of jobs that we've got in our city region now. And that's all exciting. I think transport is holding us back. It's our weakest point. And as that begins to change, I think that will add something and it will make the place even better. I'm excited about the cycling and walking infrastructure we're building. Again, I think that will improve the city region. I'm excited about plans for a living wage city region, because I think our role in life, if you look at Manchester over not just the decades, the centuries even, it's often about being a sort of more enlightened sort of beacon of the right way of doing things, sometimes against the more individualistic ways of the London world. You know, a city region that can be strong from an economic point of view, but tries to look after everybody. And I think that's what is exciting about this place. And we're kind of like a place that is bringing forward new policy thinking and, you know, I think changing things from the bottom up and using devolution actually not just to impose policies on people, but to work with our communities. And that's how we've solved or begun to solve the rough sleeping problem. And I want to apply it now to, you know, no child goes hungry, all of our younger people, all of our older people online, a living wage city region, you know, building out these kind of campaigns from the bottom up, using the power, the awesome power of this great place that we call Greater Manchester.